Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Father Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and I'm here as always with my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how you doing?
Doing all right. Spent some time on the road this past weekend, um,
Yes.
for a Easter celebration. I hope you all enjoyed whatever you're celebrating, whether it's just spring or Easter or Passover or
Whatever you may be
I don't
celebrating,
know
we
when
hope you had a
I
good
don't know
time
when
celebrating it.
I don't even know when Festivus is supposed to be.
Yeah, me either. But anyway, we are here. Normally we record over the weekend, but we had to take a couple days, so sorry this episode's coming out a little late. We are here recording on late night evening West Coast time, Tuesday, April 11th. We're going to be here today talking to you a little bit about some of our favorite prospects in each round as we get closer and closer to the NFL draft. Dad, it's about 2 weeks away. You excited?
It's getting closer. We're getting closer and closer to maybe finally hearing about what's going to happen to Rodgers during the middle of the draft.
I would not hold my breath. We are now officially, I believe, closer to the draft than we are to him appearing on
Oh yeah,
McAfee and saying he would like to play for the Jets.
by a lot. I think we're like 4 weeks away from that, and only two from the draft.
When that happened, did you think it would take this long? Honestly,
No, I thought it'd be about a week.
right?
Yeah,
Like at most 2
I
weeks.
was like, oh, they're only waiting for him to make the announcement so they can then announce the trade that they agreed to before they flew out to California to talk to him.
Yeah. It's actually it's kind of absurd. I are you are okay, we said we weren't going to talk about Rodgers and yet here we are. But on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being very worried and 1 being not worried at all, how worried are you that this doesn't happen?
I'm not really that worried.
1 to 10.
Two.
Like a 2? I'd say I'm at like a 3.5, 4. If it doesn't happen by the draft, how worried would you be?
I still don't think the Packers are going to end up stuck with Rodgers in his contract.
You don't think so?
No,
What are your thoughts? I mean, we're
because
already.
somebody will take him for pennies on the dollar.
I mean, what are your thoughts on these reports of other teams being interested? If you missed it, recently there was a report. I'm forgetting who it was. Um,
Craig Carton.
Craig Carton, that the Niners have are monitoring the situation, I believe was the terminology he used, and that there may or may not be an offer on the table of multiple thirds this year and a first next year. Me personally, I'm taking that deal based on what it sounds like the Jets are trying to give us. But it does
I'm
seem like a
taking that
lot of the
couch.
I'm taking that couch. It does seem like a lot of the reporting we've seen is that the Packers are prioritizing picks this year in order to help Jordan Love with his development, which is, I think, a fair strategy. I don't know. What are your thoughts on all of that? I don't know if this is real. Let's just treat it as a hypothetical.
Yeah, I don't know how much he's just. I mean, he didn't report say it like it was pure speculation on his part. It's something that would be kind of interesting, though. I think the terms may have been speculation. That may have been like a trade could look like.
This is
Um,
what I put in the trade machine, and it said yes.
Sometimes the trade machine is telling me yes, and then it doesn't go through anyway.
Yes. I like that, like, all of these reports are just people paraphrasing themselves over and over and over again and just down the line, down the line, down the line until it's like, yeah, no, the Niners offered 3/3 and a first.
I heard
So,
this somewhere else, and you just said it, so it must be true.
I mean, we're
Even
getting
though I
real
was the
off
one who originally said it, and just circled back around to me.
we're getting real off the rails, but did you there's that old study where it's like a person is just as likely to believe something if they've heard the same thing 3 times from the same person as they are from like three different people or something like that. It,
There are so many things I could say about that.
I'm sure there are. But anyway, we're getting a little off track. We were going to talk about draft prospects and a little Packers news here today. But before we got into that, I just want to pitch a couple of things. Come, if you like what you hear today, come give us a follow on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. We tweet out new articles going on that we find interesting. We're doing mock drafts every Monday. We are doing tweeting out news that's going around the league around Rodgers, around possible draft prospects, free agents, et cetera, et cetera. We also tweet out when we have new episodes. So if you want to be able to keep up with us, go follow us there. And if you really like what you heard, you can subscribe to us on your podcast platform of choice, whether that's Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, wherever you can find podcasts, you can find us. So if you want to subscribe to us there, and then if you want to subscribe to us on YouTube as well, it would really help our numbers. We post all our episodes there as well. So those are all of your pitches for today. And Dad, let's start with a little bit of Packers news in this episode. We already talked a little bit about Rodgers. Bakhtiari on Bussin' with the Boys, which is podcast show media thing. I don't necessarily know exactly which one it would classify as. Talked a bit about going through his injury and that he feels that he's kind of on the quote unquote back nine of his career. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, on what he
Yeah,
said. I didn't get a chance to listen to too much of it.
I haven't. I read a little bit about it. I haven't actually watched it, but he says something about he's somewhere in the teens on his round. I think it was the phrase he actually used. And he talks about, he doesn't know exactly how long it is, and he's feeling pretty good about it overall. What else did he say? He said something about, it was just really hard to being away from something he loves.
Yeah.
That being taken away from him while he's been hurt. And then he says some stuff about I'd have to go. You should probably look into it yourselves, listeners, about what he says about um, the Rodgers trade and whatever going on with the Jets and between the Jets and the Packers. But I think he had some thoughts into that as well.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just been such a hard go of it for Bakhtiari over the past few years. Um, just, but the thing is, when he's played, he's been so good.
I don't. Yeah, did he give up no sacks this year?
I don't think
Is
it was
that
quite no sacks. I can check that really quick if you want to fill some time for me, though.
Yeah, I'll fill some time with some of the other sort of announcements and media. So, like Murphy spoke today to the media as he was leaving for
I
a
think
tour of the
someone,
state,
I think someone
and
talked to him.
obviously, like before, he was said something about some joke about, well, I'm not allowed to say anything. So basically says, I don't know where we are in the negotiation and whose court the ball is in, or however whatever phrase he used. And I assume I'll be asked this many times in this whole tour, and I won't be giving any comments.
Yeah, someone
Except
finally
that,
said, "Hey, stop talking into a microphone. You're not doing us any favors, buddy."
yep. But he
And
did
yes,
something like
Bakhtiari gave up no sacks, just
he didn't
as
give
a
him no
note.
sacks. Okay, and he says something about he and Gutekunst are both involved. He also, and then also there's Joe Douglas was, I don't know what the, he and
It
Boomer
was
Esiason on stage and how much they'd been drinking before getting up in front of the mic.
yes, and he
But Boomer
said
asked what's going on with Rodgers, and in front of a cheering crowd of Jets fans, saying that Rodgers, that he
he's
will
coming.
be here,
Yep,
or
he's
he's
going to
coming.
be
Is that
there. It was
so?
one of the two, yeah. So, I mean, once again, making promises to Jets fans that he's probably going to have to
They've
keep
been making all
because,
kinds of promises to Jets fans, and the Jets fans are like, "Oh, that doesn't mean that you guys have leverage."
yeah, I know, right? Isn't it hilarious? But no, so I think, I mean, what if they don't get him? The Jets are in some hot water too, is all I'm going to say.
Oh, if
There
this
was,
doesn't go down, there's going to be a problem on both sides. That's
oh
the
yeah,
thing.
yeah. I mean, mutually, we're all going to be kind of screwed if this trade doesn't happen. Beyond that, though, Dad, some other pieces of news. We have some updates on some official visits with Green Bay. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No,
Jets
I
wise
just had those
news?
few little things about people talking to the media in the last week or so. That there's probably more that we didn't mention, but that's enough because it's all going to be about Rodgers, and we've had
Yep,
enough.
I know, right? But speaking of quarterbacks and transitioning to our next point, the Packers have had quite a few meetings recently with their top 30 visits, and a few, we're going to go position by position. Let's start here with quarterback data. It does seem that the Packers have some genuine interest in the quarterbacks in this draft. They have had Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee, who's kind of consensus like mid second to late first round pick, depending on who you ask. And then Clifford out of Penn State. Sean Clifford, that is, out of Penn State. He is more of an undrafted free agent, late round pick. Thoughts on either of these two guys? Thoughts on the Packers maybe taking a quarterback? I know. Okay, I'll say my piece first. I would have a lot of questions if they used a top 50 pick on a quarterback. I would be okay with taking an undrafted free agent. Or like a seventh rounder. I don't see any problems with that.
Yeah, if they use because so Hooker is projected to go in like the first or second round.
Oh, and Hooker, by the way, coming off a torn ACL and is older than Jordan Love by a year. So just keep that in mind.
He'll be the veteran voice in the room to guide Love. in his development.
Goodness gracious.
But yeah, I would it would be mind-boggling, and say so many things about the process inside the front office if they draft any quarterback in the first 2 rounds,
What
unless
are
say like Stroud falls to 15 for some
I mean,
reason,
or
any of the
any of
top
the
four,
non-Levis top four for me
any,
personally.
any of the top three, then
Yeah.
yeah, and
Um,
it's so but the fact that they've looked at two makes it sound like they're gonna look to add a rookie quarterback
which is weird to
instead of
me.
a
I
veteran,
don't
or
understand
maybe
why you
both.
wouldn't add. Why would you not add a veteran?
Maybe they'll do
I.
both. Maybe they want to spend pennies,
Why
and
would
so
they
they're going to get a
roster
seventh rounder.
Why would they roster three quarterbacks?
Uh,
Does to me it does not make sense. I think when you have an older quarterback, it makes sense to have a younger quarterback as a backup. When you have a younger quarterback, it makes sense to have an older quarterback as a backup. Someone who has made all of the mistakes you can make, is going to know everything in the meeting, is going to know all the schemes. I don't really quite understand the logic of it. Now, when it's the seventh rounder, it's like whatever. Those picks hardly ever work out, anyways. But I don't know.
yeah,
If
I
they
mean,
take Hendon Hooker in the second round, I'm not going to be very happy.
I think they just following the same playbook as they did before, and say,
I'm
well, this kind of worked last time with the transition from far, even though they're not really paying attention to what's going on. Does it have to be the same? Was that really a good idea last time?
and you know what it kind of parallels a little bit is the drafting of Brian Brom, who was picked in the second round by the Packers out of Louisville,
Right. And
after they
right,
already had Rodgers,
that's
and
what I
he
mean. They
was
they picked Brom and Matt Flynn
yeah.
in the
Matt Flynn was
same
good though.
draft, though Flynn was the one who actually lasted as opposed to Brom.
Yeah. Um, you know what I think? I think it was Acme Packing Company. Their podcast was saying that I think is my like hope for why they're having Hooker in is they want to ask him about all of these. They want to ask him about all these Tennessee guys they keep taking
And
an eye
so,
on.
how would you feel about that if you were on a visit and you come all the way in there and they go, "So, tell us all about Darnell Wright, Jalen Hyatt, and Cedric Tillman." He's like, "You brought me all the way out here for that?"
Yeah, it's like you rub my lamp. Did you wake me up? Yeah, they're just bringing him all the way out there just to ask about like which of his receivers he likes. Because there were those rumors they really liked Hyatt, and Tillman is a guy that a lot of people are really high on in this class, and the tackle Wright as well.
He's another one they brought in for a visit already.
Yep, exactly.
He's the only O lineman they brought in so far, and he's a guy. So it's if we keep going down the position list, he's trying to be kind of a late first round offensive tackle. Huge,
Yeah,
like 330 pounds, bigger than most of the ones that have played lately. Though they've got bigger ones on the team with Caleb Jones.
yeah. Well, let's use that to kind of take that as a moving on to some other visits. Unless you wanted to talk more about quarterbacks, I think we
No,
kind of
I
covered
think
it.
I think we can go on to the you just run through who they brought in for visits and the position group so far.
Yeah, well, O line Darnell Wright, tackle out of Tennessee. It's pretty Joe, kind of late first. Pretty good athlete. Actually, very good athlete if I remember correctly. Let me just double check his RAS. Um, very big, as you said. He is 6'5", 333. 9.47 RAS, really good 40-yard dash for his size, really good 20-yard split for his size, and then a really nice broad jump, over 9 feet for his size, and a good vertical 29 inches, which isn't bad for a man of his size. Like I said, he's a big man. He's a big man, and he can move pretty well for how big he
It's
is.
like launching a rocket to get up in the air and a vertical when you're that big.
Yeah. Beyond that, Dontavian Wicks, wide receiver out of Virginia, kind of a fourth rounder. Not very fast, but I do like what I see on tape out of him, and still a very good relative athletic score. Very explosive 39-inch vert and a 10-foot broad jump. Pretty good 10-yard split despite not being the fastest guy. He's 6'1", 205. He's built pretty stocky. Decent agilities. So someone that would be interesting. I do like what he does with the ball in his hands despite not necessarily being the fastest guy.
nice jukes on tape, but he also had a really nice 2021. Really put
Hmm.
up some big receiving numbers, and not so much last year. And I don't know what kind of health issues he might have been going through last year.
Yeah, and then some guys we already talked about: Darnell Washington out of Georgia, tight end; Jordan Howden, safety out of Minnesota; Jamie Robinson, Florida State safety; Marte Mapu, Sacramento State safety. We talked about all these guys in previous episodes. Then going down the list, um, in terms of edges, also Will McDonald, who we already mentioned in a previous episode. Another edge they brought in recently is Keon White out of Georgia Tech. He's a bit of an older prospect. Mid-second round is kind of projected to where he's going to go. He is also a very good athlete, as we've talked about a bunch of times on this show. Brian Gutekunst loved his athletes. 992 RAS. He's 6'4", with 30 reps on the bench, 34-inch vert, 9-foot broad. 6'4", 285 pounds. So very heavy as well. And then a 4.7-ish, 4.78, 4.79, 40-yard dash with really good 10-yard split. He is a little on the older side, though, if I remember correctly. He also has really long arms, 34-inch arms. And he did pretty well at the Senior Bowl, if I remember correctly. A lot of buzz coming out of there when that happened. Then going down the list, running backs, they've brought in 3 now. Keaton Mitchell out of East Carolina, Lou Nichols out of Central Michigan, and Evan Hull out of Northwestern. You said they also met with him at the Combine, I believe.
I remember them. There's a report come out. They had talked to him out of the combine. I think must have been at the combine. And then I
Yeah.
started looking at him in my mock drafts and picked him a few times. So they're looking at running backs. They're all kind of later, fifth, sixth, seventh rounders. They seem to be, maybe even Unfa in the case of Nichols.
Yeah, and I have not honestly looked at the running back class too much, but it makes sense because I think Patrick Taylor was fine last year, but you could definitely upgrade at that
yeah,
position.
and Hull in particular has I think a lot of receiving chops, and that I don't know for sure if that's the case with Mitchell and Nichols. I'd have to look that up.
And then the last one is interior D-line, Roy out of Louisiana State, or LSU, sorry. I don't know why I said Louisiana State, even though it's technically correct. He's projected to go around the
Yeah,
fourth
there's nothing
round.
wrong with that.
No, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say Louisiana State, though. Go Tigers, as Ed Orgeron would have said. Any thoughts on any of these guys, Dad, before we move on to some of our favorite players in each round?
It'll be
Draft
interesting to
discussion
see
up?
when they fill in. So basically, like halfway
Yeah.
to their top visits, and the only position they've doubled up at only a few positions: quarterback, edge, safety, and running back. They haven't doubled up at tight end, and they haven't doubled up at receiver or D line. Which we'll see what happens. Some of those we think we need desperately, like tight end and D line.
Yeah.
So we'll see how. Maybe some of these players they feel like they already know enough about, and some of these visits are for players they want to find out more about. The
And there's a
positions they're
number
looking
of,
at.
like you said, tight end they haven't doubled up. They did meet with a lot of the tight ends at the Combine. So that's
Right.
another thing.
And supposedly they met with a lot of wide receivers at the combine, like
Mhm.
um,
Smith and
Jackson
Jigba.
Smith and Jigba, Jalen Hyatt. I think there were reports that they were talking to him or interested in him somewhere as well.
Yeah. And so this isn't the end all be all. They're not necessarily going to pick one of the players from this list. It's just something to keep an eye on.
But the last couple of years, they have been getting some players from this list.
Yeah, more so than in previous years, I would say.
Yeah.
That is like more so under Brian Gutekunst than under Ted Thompson. All right, Dad, should we get on to the meat and potatoes of this?
Yeah.
So something that we thought would be
Tell us.
interesting would, just be going through some prospects that we like in each round. We're getting closer and closer to the draft, and we're getting closer and closer to maybe having some Aaron Rodgers news, and that's going to take up a whole episode. Probably have about, I would say, 2 episodes until the draft starts. So we're really getting down to my favorite time of the year. I mean, draft's NFL Christmas to me. So we were just going to go through each round of the draft, and we were each going to pick a player that we liked. Although, Dad, I'm seeing we might have a duplicate in round 1 already.
We have a duplicate in round 1. I could change this, I suppose.
Maybe we'll just give our not as deep of an in-depth dive on our favorites, but let's start it off with round 1, our favorite prospect in round 1. These are our favorite prospects for the Packers. So we'll be doing each round except for the 6th round because the Packers do not have a 6th rounder this year. So, well, let's start it off. our favorite prospect in the first round, I'm going to go ahead of you, is Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think we both had this. For me, the reasoning behind this is I think he's just the best receiver in the draft, and I don't think it's that close. The more and more like we really keep an eye on this, and the further you look into this, and the athletic testing, and the more people, and the more you dive
and
into the film and stuff, and
and the leaks coming out as well. People,
I mean, I
talking
have
about
this.
the league the league opinion.
Yeah, and the reason I would like this so much for the Packers is I think getting another receiver in that room who is he's more of a slot guy. I don't think he's necessarily a slot only guy, but he's more of a slot guy. Um, it would just be a really nice safety blanket for Jordan Love to have, and a guy who could attack the middle of the field more, which I don't think they have right now.
That's what I would really like about him is they really need a receiver to just live in the middle and be a volume receiver in the middle of the field.
Yeah. But for instance, to give you an idea of what the league thinks about him, Jim Nagy, who is the president of the Senior Bowl, recently said that he has, quote, spoken to numerous teams that have only one first round grade at the position, and that guy is Jackson Smith and Jigba. So that's kind of giving you an idea of what the league thinks about the receiver class in general. Um, His speed is just okay, 8.29 relative athletic score, which is quite good. And the speed's just okay, ran like a low four
It
fives.
was like a 4.52,
The
I
one
think.
issue is the 10-yard split is really bad, which, mileage may vary. But the broad jump and the agilities are elite, which for a guy who's going to be doing a lot of
Elite.
stuff, which for a guy who's going to be doing a lot of work in the slot, those I think are the most important things. And then just you watch him, just a lot of toughness, good feel for zones. Dad, what did you like about him? And do you have like a plan B type guy that you would also be really high with? My plan B guy would be Miles Murphy, young edge rusher out of Clemson.
That's gonna be if I had to go for somebody else. I think I would go for Miles Murphy as somebody who might be there for me. Jackson Smith and Jigba is the guy that it almost doesn't matter who's left unless it's somebody like crazy, like Anderson or something
Yep.
has fallen all the way from the best overall player in the draft to 15.
You
But
could convince me Paris Johnson or Skoronski maybe as well.
yeah, those Skoronskis, I think agilities are not so great.
I'll double check that while you talk a bit more about
Check
Jigba.
that because that's one thing, but maybe Paris Johnson. But if Jackson Smith and Jigba is there, I'd be like running to the podium to draft him. Um, you talk about his testing numbers, yeah, and his agility is elite, really good. And he's just kind of a stud in production as well. He led the team in receiving in 2021, despite the fact that there were two future first rounders on the team. He
Garrett
had more
Wilson and
receiving
Chris
yards.
Olave.
He had more receiving yards than either of them.
And if you ask, apparently people have asked them who the best receiver on that team was, and they have both said Smith and Jigba was the best of the three of them. And Brian Hartline, their receiver coach, also I believe said he was the best of the three
Yeah.
of them.
The one thing we didn't really get a chance to see was how well he'd do without the speed on the outside, since he got hurt and only played 3 games this year.
I mean, even if he did play, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be a top 8 pick next year. So, like, Ohio State is cranking these receivers out. So yeah, the other concern is health. He didn't really play much at all this year. I think if he's still projected to go in the first round and we haven't heard anything at this point, I would imagine that the health is checking out. Beyond that, though, so I just have a quick question, just something to add on here. What is the highest you would trade up to draft him?
11,
Okay. All right, 4 spots.
I think.
Oh,
I'm not quite. I'd have to look to see what that would cost. Would that cost a third rounder? I'd give him a
I think it
third
might
rounder.
cost more. It would cost more than that.
Like I say, however much we get it for the third rounder, for sure.
I think it would definitely cost more than that to get to 11. Just peeking at the Jimmy Johnson trade chart.
Yeah, but that's out of date.
It's out of date, but it's still it's a baseline. Going from 15.
Yeah, I've been meaning to get the other chart, the more recent chart.
Yeah, 15 to 11 would be the equivalent of, well, it'd be about a third rounder, according to this chart, but it is out of date. I mean, yeah, it is what it is. All right, should we go on to our favorite second rounders?
Yes. So I would just say, like you, that if I had to pick somebody else, since you picked Smith and Jigba, I would probably also gone with Murphy. I think I like him above other possibilities. That would be like Lucas Van Ness,
Yeah,
Nolan Smith. I don't know if Quentin Johnson is a first round grade for me anymore.
it's kind
Derek
of
Jones.
the thing is, it's like I don't necessarily know if I have 31. I don't think I have 31 first round grades. I might not even have 20. Um,
Maybe Dalton Kincaid. Maybe, but he hasn't
Kincaid, the
tested.
the lack of testing is so scary for me.
Yeah. So,
I would say Brzee for me. I really like
oh
him.
yeah, Brazil is another one
Yeah,
that is a possibility.
and I would not be surprised if that's the pick at all. I
That'd
also
be
wouldn't be
that would
surprised if
be
then
very Packers if they pick Brazil.
yeah. Should we move on to the second round? Do you want to go first?
Sure. So here I went the player that I often pick early in the second round. Of course, I'm also usually doing these mocks with multiple round two picks. So that often influences how I structure the positions I want to cover early. And this is also is kind of on the cusp of first and second. Is not always there, but I'm going with him anyway. Adetomiwa Adebaware. Yeah, he's consensus right now, pick 44, though I think he's rising in the rankings. And he's only just over 22 years old. So I think some of the players that we're looking at are pretty, like trying to trend towards like Jackson Smith and Jigba is only 21, just over 21. Adebaware has elite athleticism. He's a little short for the position as an edge rusher, 6'1" and a half, 282. He's a little bit heavier. So you could play either edge or in the D line. And in college at help me out here, it's
Northwestern.
purple. It's a purple team. It's like
Yeah.
Northwestern, Kansas State, Northwestern. Um, he had played 261 snaps in the B gap, a few right over the tackle, and 374 outside the tackle. So I think he can maybe do a little bit of what Zedarius is doing. They line up inside a bit or line up wide as an edge rusher. Elite RAS 9.72 with a 40 of 4.49, which would have been one of the best safeties in the entire class.
Can we move him? Can we have him play at tight end too? Honestly, like, would it be that bad? I wouldn't. How bad could it be?
Right, a 4.49 40 at 282 pounds, and he was in the 98th or higher percentile for um, in the vert, in the broad 40, in his 20 and 10 splits, and also in the shuttle and three cone. And he's
His
got
mock
30.
draftable is just a circle. It's just a big
Yeah,
circle.
his spider chart,
Yeah.
and he's got 33 and 7/8 inch arms. He has good run and pass grades for PFF. Run 7.5, and the pass rush is even better at 80.3. His pressure rate is over 10%, so not and then is so it's kind of you'd like to get a little bit more out of him from that, I think, and not that many sacks, only just 6 in 2022 and 5 in 2021. So this would be another case of drafting for elite traits and also possible positional alignment versatility.
Hmm. Yeah. I like him a lot. If I
He
didn't
may
pick the
not he may
player,
not be there. In
I
which
could
case,
definitely
maybe I would.
see a player betting on those traits in the first round, or a team betting on
Yeah,
those traits in the first round.
yeah. So if he was gone, then I'd probably go with Felix Anudike Uzama,
Who is
another edge rusher.
the
The
other purple school
other
edge
purple
rusher
school edge rusher, in this
out of
case,
Kansas State?
Kansas State.
I think honestly, when I watch the two of them, I like Onodike Uzama more. Just watching
Yeah,
them,
I like
but
he's significantly bigger as well.
Adebawore is like that testing is
I mean,
just
sorry, Adebawari is significantly bigger
yeah.
than Uzama.
I like watching Uzama. I think watching them, I like Uzama better. But the testing for Adebawore is just so enticing that I feel like some team's going to bet on those traits. I wouldn't be
And
surprised
you
if
know
it's the
what team
Packers.
that bets on traits,
That's,
especially in the trenches,
yep.
are the
I'll,
Packers.
I'll give you one guess. For me, my favorite second round player, we've talked about this a lot. I bring him up almost every time. Sam Laporta, tight end out of Iowa. I think he's probably the most well-rounded of the tight end group. A lot of people would say Mayer. I'm not the biggest fan of Mayer, which I've also said a lot of times on this podcast. Great overall grades from the PFF in each of the last 3 years. Not the best run blocking grade this past year, but I think he's a little on the small side, but really good with the ball in his hands, really good hands, very solid route runner. Lined up all over the place for Iowa. Um, Pretty much, I would say it looks like I 2/3 of the time, or maybe 3/4 of the time, 60% of the time in inline, and then 40% of the time out in the slot. So he's able to move around a little bit, which is nice. Um, just really like the way that he takes on contact with the ball in his hands. I think he could be a really nice weapon in the passing game. Like I said, he's a little on the smaller side. He's only 245, but he's an elite athlete. 9.25 RAS with really good explosive speed and agility scores. The only thing really bringing it down is that he's not the biggest guy. He's like 6'3", 245, I think. But his main comparables on Mock Draftable, for whatever that's worth, are Dalton Keene, and then who was drafted this past year, and then Evan Ingram, very similar wise.
Yeah,
Um,
and Rass has his comp as George Kittle.
exactly. I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't want to helmet scout too much. I didn't. I didn't want
Oh,
to.
I wasn't
I
even
didn't
thinking
want
about
to
the
do it
helmet
too
scout.
much.
They just are similar Rass, and
I
he
mean,
also I would say he plays the most Kittle esque
yeah.
in terms of just keep trying to run through people.
I didn't just want to do the Iowa tight end thing that people did with Hawkinson, where they're like, "Oh, he's Kittle," and it's like he's a very good player. I don't know if he's Kittle, but I see a lot of Hawkinson when I watch him. He's not quite as good a player as that, but um, not a whole lot of production at Iowa. They don't throw the ball much, so it is what it is. Um, but I just think he could be a really good addition to this type of offense the Packers like to run. Um, just watching him, I feel pretty confident in him as a player. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's a little too small. That'd be the one way I could see this going poorly. But he's not really that much smaller than guys like Kittle. What if I told you that Kittle is only 5 pounds heavier and like half an inch taller? Um, it's all about how you like big you play, and I think that Laporta plays bigger than he is. Um, do you want to move on to the third round, or do you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I think that was it for me.
Um, we might as well skip the third round, right? Because
Why did you bother? Do they
why
have
even
picks in the
bother?
third round?
I will not matter. Whoever they pick is not going to be any good. Do you think anyone's ever going to just ask Gutekunst like, hey, why do you think all the guys in the third round you pick just like aren't that good?
Do you guys just like take a nap during the third round and you know
They're just
a
dead
raccoon a
exhaust.
raccoon runs a card up there for you?
I think random chance they would be getting a better player than they have been
They
getting.
need a better dart thrower.
I mean, just pick a guy. I don't know what you do, but go ahead and I'll lead us off with best third rounder. For me, it's A.T. Perry out of Wake Forest. My honorable mention is Sidney Brown. I was going based on the PFF's big board, and they have him down here near the third round. I'll talk just a second about Sidney Brown. For me, I know I said earlier in our podcast series that I was not the biggest fan of Sidney Brown because he's not the best tackler. That was when he was going closer to the top of the second round. For me, he's such a good athlete, and a class that is not a very good class for safeties, that if he's there in the third, I think that's a totally fine place to pick him.
Yeah. He's also maybe the best cover safety in the class.
Yeah, I know he's been falling out of favor a bit recently just because I think the tackling issues are a legitimate concern, and he has short arms. So it's not just that he's not tackling well; it's that he's physically not built to tackle well
Yeah,
either. Like
he's also rocked up. Maybe he can't like
it's
get his
just
hands close enough together to
a little too
wrap somebody up.
muscular. It's just way too buff. He just can't close. His pecs don't let him fully close his arms. And then A.T. Perry was the other one here.
I
Just
like Perry.
another.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about him a little bit? I know this is one of your guys.
So he had a nice RAS. Let's see, I have it up here. He was
A 9.85 RAS.
I have a 9.62 on the RAS
Okay.
site, but 6'3", almost 200, 4.47 at that size with good jumps. His shuttle's not good, but his three cone is really good. And his splits are also, he's like
And
80, 90 percentile in most things.
He's one of the few bigger receivers. Oh, he's out of Wake Forest. I don't know if we mentioned that.
Oh yeah,
He's one of the few bigger receivers in this class. He's very physical. I feel like watching him, he's not afraid to attack over the middle, which, like we said with Smith and Jigba, is a type of archetype of player we need, especially with Lazard gone. Um,
Yeah, and he's also been
and
very
he
productive. He's had 1,100 yards last year and 1,296 the year before.
back-to-back 1,000-yard double-digit touchdown seasons with Wake Forest.
Yeah, so he's been both productive fairly early on in his career. He's a little older than a lot of some of the prospects we talked about. He's 23, almost 23 and a half now. So, but still, I wouldn't hate it. Um, for my own, I went a different direction since I didn't do a tight end in the second. Though if we have 3 second-round picks, I will. Um, I went with Tucker Kraft, who's the consensus has him just barely into the third round. He's got a consensus of 70 with the third round starting at 64. Almost 22 and a half, an elite RAS of 9.7, which is kind of thinking about the Packers and tight ends. So we didn't talk about this with Laporta. Strangely, Green Bay has not paid that much attention to athleticism at tight
We
end
talked
compared
about
to
this. We
other
talked about
positions.
this
We
in
had
our
a whole
combine
episode of this,
prep.
so I went back
Yeah,
on our notes compared to other positions over the last. So um, over the last 10 years, 66% of the top 5 tight ends in receiving yards have had a RAS over 9, and another 22% over 7. Tucker Kraft has a 9.7. 70 percentile size, and then like 80 to 90 percentile in speed, including the splits. Great explosion, good agility, and his top 2 RAS comps are Kelsey and Goddard.
Goddard,
His
who we went to the same school as, South Dakota State. Go Jackrabbits.
another South Dakota State, right? Go Jackrabbits, or go or
Yeah,
not go. Better. If you're a Jackrabbit, you better run.
and I do feel like with Kraft, he's a little gangly, but
He's a little gangly, but
they need tight ends badly. Is
he
the
also
point?
looks like he's got some power in him. I don't know.
I feel like his frame also looks like he could put on some weight.
Yes. His run blocking grade was almost 70 PFF. That's actually pretty good. And
It's
his
actually
receiving grade
better.
was
It's better than Laporta's.
and his receiving grade is 76.6. He had 770 yards in 50 games in 2021, where he even had better grade overall grade than he had last year. He played fewer games last year, only 9 instead of 15 in 2021. It had a lot fewer yards. So I'm not sure what the deal is there, what changed, why he played fewer games. So that's something I'd have to dig a little deeper into. He's shown he can be productive 2 years ago, and then for tight ends, if you want to get a great tight end, you should be paying less attention to production in college and more attention to
Athleticism. It's been
athleticism.
proven. Dawson Knox out of Buffalo, not a whole lot of production. George Kittle, not a whole lot of not out of Buffalo. Sorry, he plays for Buffalo now. He's out of Ole Miss. George Kittle out of Iowa, not a whole lot of production. What's his name? The rookie this past year had a pretty good year for the Giants out of San Diego State. Goodness, what is his name? I'm just gonna pull it up.
I was gonna say Jay Sternberger. Jay Sternberger, a decent amount of production.
Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. Says Daniel Bellinger was the one I had. He had a pretty nice rookie year for the Giants. But yeah, bet on athleticism. The Packers have not done that. I would like them to. I think it would help the results because your tight end room is not good. Let's take it over to the 4th round though. Do you want to start us off?
Yeah. So I'm ready to take a safety, and we're gonna go. I'm going back to the well on a player we were all in on.
I was so high on,
and now we're getting back.
I'm back in, baby. I'm back in.
Especially as maybe he's going a little later. 4th round is probably, maybe he could go in the 3rd, but this might be the sweet spot for him. Jair Brown from Penn State.
In a better safety class, I would say he's definitely going 4th because that initial athletic testing was so bad and he's small. But the safety class is so poor that I think people are going to lean on the tape a little bit more with him, and I think he'll probably go into the 3rd. But hey, you never know.
Yeah, he's a little shorter. His weight's okay. His weight's above that.
No, he's built like a running back.
Yeah, he's 5'11 and a half, 204. He just meets some of the athletic thresholds thanks to his pro day. His speed was, instead of being like 4.65, it was a 4.57, I think.
Yeah,
So a
that
significant
four five
improvement.
seven will play. 4.65 is you're in the danger zone, buddy.
Yeah. Though even with that 4.65, uh, that testing, his 10-yard split was still good. It was like 1.5 or no 1.56. Sorry, 1.56. I think
Yeah,
was
but
his.
safety is one of those positions where you're going to be chasing guys, and
Yeah,
that's
you want some
not
long
going to
speed.
play.
You want some log speed, but he's got some. I think he's, you kind of have some. So that 1.56 is actually,
Yeah, the 40 time though just limits your versatility. I feel like you just can't
yeah,
play like you need to play down near the line of scrimmage a lot. I feel like when you're not running fast.
yeah. But 4.57 it wouldn't be the worst safety they've drafted in the last 5 years.
I mean, what is that saying? Come on now.
Okay, so he's better than HaHa Clinton Dix,
He's better than Haha. He's better than Quentin Rollins. He's better than.
but his 10-yard split is as good as Savage's.
That's surprising.
Yeah, it's the same 10-yard split, and that's his combine 10-yard split.
Man, this guy's just tops. He's just not open his stride. Like, what's
I don't
going on
know.
here?
Yeah, so it was 1.56, which is the same as Savage's 1.56.
And I would say, like, watching him, he plays pretty fast. So
And right, and so he's also has big hands, 10 and an eighth, but kind of average size arms.
he's built so weird.
His tape is really nice, really fun to watch. He reacts
Yeah,
very quickly, which maybe makes him look faster than he is on the field, and he is aggressive to the ball. 4 interceptions in 2022. I think it was PFF. It was ahead of a six, or I forget what I saw it. 6 in 2021. Maybe that was on ESPN. I can't remember now when I saw that. QB rating when targeted was 66.6 per NFL Draft Buzz.com. Over half of his snaps, he was lined up deep, and also maybe about a quarter of the time in the slot and a quarter of the time in the box. So as opposed to some other safeties who are really maybe slot corners, he really has played a lot of deep and is going after the ball and making plays, reacting to the ball and making plays, cutting in front of the receivers. There's some nice tape of him um, jumping the route and taking the ball.
yeah, I'm
He
back in.
does. He does have.
I think he's still my favorite. I think
He
he's still my
does have
favorite.
some missed tackles. His tackling isn't great. At least
Yeah,
consistent. Maybe you may say it's not
short arms.
consistent enough.
Short arms.
But not
Can't
really.
wrap up.
Not really short for a safety.
I think they're pretty low if I remember correctly. Let's see. He
It's
is
31 and a quarter.
Hey, yeah, 36th percentile. That's short, but not. Wow, he does have big hands. He's got lineman hands.
Yeah, they're like over 10 inches. He's got big hands.
Crazy. What's up with that? Doesn't make much sense. For me, my fourth round guy was Chandler Zavala, guard out of NC State. He's a little on the older side, is the only thing I'd say with him. He's 24 years old. But he's a really good athlete, 9.5 RAS. Only allowed 4 pressures on 422 pass blocking snaps this past season, according to PFF. Really blew a lot of people away at his pro day. If they want to go interior O-line here, I think this would be a really good pick. They love their athletes there. I don't know if he's going to play anywhere besides guard. I don't believe he has any center experience, I don't think. Let me just double check that. What do you think about that pick, Dad?
I think he's kind of moving up into that range after his pro day. I think there's a lot of buzz after the pro day about how good he looked. And I don't know if I haven't seen any.
Yeah, he's exclusively a left guard. All of his snaps except for one at right guard have been at left guard in the past 2 years.
Yeah. And his arms are only 32.875. So
he's a guard.
Really, not so long where you would think, oh, this guy, we could send him out to tackle.
But he has not allowed a sack in the past 2 years, according to PFF. Which, not bad. And he's an elite athlete. So you would hope it would translate. So that would be my pick in the fourth round. And I honestly think he's a riser right now. He's probably going to rise up to the third, but for now, he's a fourth. You can call it cheating if you want, but I'm going to take him there. Fifth round for me.
Speaking of cheating for picking guys who are this
For
both of us, I
me,
think, have actually done this. The consensus is, I think, there's a widespread in the rankings for each of these players that we've chosen, and both of them, which gives a consensus average in the fifth round.
yeah, I felt like I wanted to. So this next guy, fifth round, is John Gaines the second, guard out of UCLA. For me, this was a guy who. So for PFF, they have him going like seventh round. That felt like cheating. Daniel Brugler, who writes The Beast for The Athletic, put this guy around the fifth round as his grade, fourth, fifth. So I felt kind of good about putting him right there in the middle there in the fifth. But John Gaines the second, the main reason here is the short shuttle. He had the best short shuttle in the draft amongst any lineman this year. And this stat is from Josh Norris. Quote, since 2010, just 28 offensive linemen have recorded a 4.47 short shuttle or better at the NFL Combine. 24 of those 28 were drafted, and those 24 went on to start 84% of their NFL games. For reference, Gaines hit 4.45, which hits that threshold. It's just, if you hit that, like odds are you're going to be a starting lineman in the NFL. For
Yeah,
reference, Zach Tom hit that mark last year. We saw how good he was in his rookie year.
yeah,
It's just an easy bet. It's a
and
good bet to make.
and I don't know if you mentioned this. Maybe you had it written that Gaines had the best short shuttle of all linemen at the combine.
Yep. And beyond that, I mean, if we just want to talk a little bit about his overall athleticism, a 9.65 RAS, little on the smaller side, 6'4", just 300 pounds flat, not the best bench, but really nice vertical, 32 and a half inches, really nice broad 9 foot, really good 40-yard dash around a 5 flat, really good 10-yard split, like a 1.65. And then, like we said, best shuttle at the combine, and then a really nice 3-cone 7.31. Really good athlete. Played in a big program at UCLA. I'm a little surprised he's this low. I mean, we haven't had the best luck with UCLA cards in the past couple of
The
years.
past year,
Yeah. But I think you just
maybe
bet
we
on
should pick
that
him in the
short.
third round.
Yeah, but on day 3, I think you just bet on that short shuttle time, especially in the fifth round.
Oh yeah,
It's
I think
yielded good results.
if you're looking for linemen on day three, just pick the linemen with good short shuttles and good testing. It's just what I've been doing in my mock drafts.
Yeah, but that's my bet. What about you?
So I picked another guy who's been rising. So he was ranked. So he may continue to rise out of this. And I think there's some maybe inside the NFL that could have hires. Moro Ajomo, defensive lineman from Texas. Right now he's consensus 139, which just gets him into the fifth round. And he's young. So the Packers like that too. He's only 20, about 21 and a half years old now. And that's after being in college for 5 years. He started school in, I think it was Nigeria. Somebody would maybe will let me know that that's wrong if I've got it wrong, where they start school a little earlier. So he first enrolled in college like only a month after he turned 17. Um, he's 6'3", 292, so a little lighter for a D lineman, but his PFF grade was a 90.6 with a 91.4 run and an 84.1 pass rush. Pressure rate of 12.6% from the defensive interior line, which is really good. But only 5 sacks. But he has also a D lineman. His has an elite RAS of 9.16 of the Packers drafted D lineman plus Kenny Clark. Only Wyatt was better, and Ojomo has a better vert and a better broad jump than any D line that the Packers have drafted in the last 5 years, plus Kenny Clark. And he has would have the second best shuttle of any draftee, behind only Kingsley Kiki.
Yeah, and honestly, Kiki when he was here, he was pretty good. Just
Yeah, so Ajomo hits a lot of the things. He's like athletic, young, and he's shown some ability to play in in the high level
yep in the
against
Big
good
12.
competition.
Yeah, I would like Jomo. I think they do need help along the defense. I mean, I don't think that's a hot take. Actually, they need help along the defensive
I
interior.
think there's a chance they take, especially if they end up with get an extra 2 picks, or if they trade back, that they'll take 2 D linemen.
The more I think about it, the higher I am on Brzee in the first round. I might need to go back and change my answer.
Yeah, I think they'll get like 2 D linemen, two tight ends, two safeties, and maybe two wide receivers.
They need Wyatt to pan out, huh?
Yeah,
They really need Wyatt to pan out. For me, let's go on to the seventh round.
yeah, and I could mention some honorable mentions. So we might have an extra pick. Well, right now we have extra pick in the fifth round, and that's maybe a big bodied receiver. And I'm thinking maybe Xavier Hutchinson or Andre Osivas
Yeah,
from
although
Princeton.
Hutchinson isn't quite as big as I thought he would be, just
Yeah,
watching him.
so just an idea. And
Yeah,
then the sixth round,
I would like either
Packers
of
have
those.
no picks.
Yep, sixth round Packers have no picks, so we're skipping that one. You can call it cheating if you want. Seventh round, for me, I stole yours because you picked him a little first, and he was
Well,
my guy.
I did have four guys listed, so
It's true. You. I mean, we do have 4 seventh round picks, but come slow your roll there, buddy. For me, I picked Jake Witt, tackle out of Northern Michigan. Um, he's moving up boards because of how good his testing was at his pro day. He wasn't even on a lot of boards initially. He wasn't even on
yeah,
Pro Football Focuses until recently
he's not even in um, the draft
for
database
Draft Network, right?
consensus ranking,
Yeah,
which
but the
goes up to was it 500
yeah,
players?
but at the seventh round, you're just picking athletes. You're really betting on traits
Yeah.
at this point.
Well, it just
And
means it just shows how
he's
much this
six
guy was
seven.
under the radar before his pro day.
Yeah, and he's 6'7", 300 pounds with a 9.92 RAS. What that means essentially is that, just breaking that down really quick, he had a 37-inch vert, a 10-foot broad, a 4.9 40, a 4.62 short shuttle, and a 7.443 cone, which are everything is elite except for his weight. He's a little light, and his bench wasn't great. Only 22 reps on the bench. 300 pounds is a little light at 6'7", but you'd think he'd probably be able to pack on some more weight in an NFL weight room. And you bet on massive dudes at that level. And his arms for his height are not huge, 33 and a half inches, but that is generally the threshold you want to hit is 33. So he's hitting that. That's my pick there. I know you had him as well. Who are the other guys that you had as we wrap up our favorite
Yeah,
players
so
for
I'll
each round?
go with the guy who I think picked first out of the seventh rounders. And that's another safety. I thought about this a little bit, and I went with Jason Taylor the second from Oklahoma State. He's kind of squarely in the seventh round at consensus 249. A little older than some of the other players we've been talking about, 23.3 years old. His size is kind of right in the edge, 6 foot 204. It's a great elite RAS really of 9.04. 4.5 40 was sort of good enough and as fast as basically every safety they've had except for Savage and like Josh Jones. I guess Josh Jones and Bryce were a little bit faster. So we'll see what That doesn't necessarily mean anything either if you're really fast for a Packer safety. Really good vert and broad. Would have the best vertical jump of any safety drafted by Green Bay in the last 5 years. Has a better coverage grade than run D grade. QB rating when he's targeted is 66.9 per NFL Draft Buzz. About half of his snaps were deep, so again similar to Jair Brown. About half of the snaps deep, a quarter in the slot, and a quarter in the box. So showing some versatility, but showing the ability to play deep. I haven't watched so much tape of him yet, so I don't know how his tape looks, whether his traits show
Mm-hmm.
up on the field. I mean,
I mean, the seventh
Brown,
round, you're just betting
he
on
seems
athletes.
right. So that's generally what I pick. I look for when I'm doing a mock draft, like who's left at a position I'm even thinking about, and then who are the best athletes there. And so here is take a flyer on somebody who's got some good athleticism. And so I just as a couple of bonus, I similar vein, another offensive tackle who's got good athleticism, John Ojukwu from Boise State, and another tight end who's getting a little more buzz lately and might not last to the seventh round, Brenton Strange from Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
As a couple honorable mentions here.
Nice. Well, anything else you wanted to add about prospects before we wrap this up?
I would say that it's going to be interesting to see how the whole structure of the draft goes in terms of where, how many picks they get back. So that'll determine, I think, how much they're able to load up a couple positions in the first two
Hmm.
days
Yeah.
with premium picks. And do they trade back um, to get additional picks into like the second round, which really seems to be,
Takes two to tango, though. I
it
don't know
does. Like
who
everybody
people would
wants
be
to get to the
trading
second
up
round because
for.
that's where the best
Yeah.
part of the draft is.
I think the only thing they could trade down is if someone needed a tackle, because they are kind of in that range where the tackles are going.
It could be that they could get somebody to trade up for
Paris
um,
Johnson, Skoronski, someone like that.
Patrick Jones,
Yep.
or
Darn all right.
if maybe Will Levis will fall all the way to 15, and then somebody will
I
the Patriots will draft up for him.
I would be surprised. But
Just making
anyway,
calls that.
thank you so much for listening as we wrap up here. We have just gone through our favorite players in each round. If you want to go give those a listen, we'll be giving out putting out an episode once a week the rest of the way as we get around to the draft, and we'll be doing an episode pretty much right after the draft. We need to talk about that, about how we want to do that. If we want to do an episode after each day, maybe, who knows?
Maybe maybe it'd be a
But
shorter episode if we could do one each day.
yeah, but we'll be putting out news on that on Twitter. Like we said, give us a follow at Father Son Packer. We'll be keeping you up to date on all of our plans for that. But until next time, thanks for listening. Go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.